and helped to organize tonight's event. Thanks to Andrea Abikaram, Lena Bergamini, Lindsay Bolt, Rissa Hochberger, Gia Gonzalez, Tom Mancini, and Kayla Nardone. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few reminders. We are recording tonight's event for archival and social media purposes. You are welcome to keep your camera on or off, but we'd like to remind you that there is a possibility that your tile will appear in the recording if you decide to leave your camera on. All audience members will be on mute, but if you have any questions or run into any difficulties, please feel free to reach out to either Kaylin, Lena, or Gia, who all have the Night Boat in their name in the chat. While we're hoping there will be no disruptions tonight, if you do notice that somebody is causing a problem in the chat, please reach out to us ASAP and we'll moderate it as quickly as possible. Lastly, if you hear something in the readings that resonates or a line you love, we encourage you to show your support by sharing it in the chat. We also encourage you to wave your hands to the camera once the reader is finished. I hope you'll consider supporting these fabulous poets by purchasing their new books from Night Boat. You can also become a subscriber and receive all of these as well as a year's worth of our books. Lena will be sharing order links in the chat. I also hope you peruse our website, look at our blog. If you're not on our email list, please sign up. And please also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks so much for your support and thanks so much for being here. My colleagues Kaylin and Gia will be hosting the reading. So now I'll turn it over to Kaylin to introduce our first poet.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So first up, it is my pleasure to introduce Rosamond S. King. Rosamond S. King is a creative and critical writer, performer, and artist based in Brooklyn, New York. She's an associate professor of English at Brooklyn College and serves as director of the Ethel R. Wolf Institute for the Humanities. Her poetry publications include the Lambda Award-winning collection, Rock Salt Stone, and most recently, All the Rage, an ambitious, provocative, and passionate collection that conceptualizes state violence, racism, and the persistence of Black desire and joy. All the Rage is referential, vibrant, and musical, and every poem is imbued with life. Please join me in welcoming Rosamond King.
Thank you, Kaylin and Night Boat and everyone for coming. As a land acknowledgement, I'm going to read part of a poem called Etymology of a Scream. None of us hearing beyond our own lament, none acknowledging our cousins, Nyack, Canarsie, Lenape, Anishinaabe, Comanche, Tonkawa, mourning with screaming wails, not because they were first to walk here, nor because theirs was the first blood the ground was forced to drink, but because they are still here, and we could together feel the beating heart of the earth, embrace the tree's knowledge, their ability to smile, mourn those who came before and the absence among those who remain, and that we, uninvited guests, will not name Lenape, Canarsie, Comanche, Tonkawa, Nyack, Honeyoe, Turtlehead, Shagbark, Bedstraw, and we'll call none of them family. Many of the poems in All the Rage are part of an ongoing series called Living in the Abattoir. It's called the abattoir because we live under the blade. It's called the abattoir because there is a larger economy based on our systematic, continuous, and premature death. It is the outside inside, a part of and separate. Yonder, they do love our flesh. They love it jiggling, they love it naked, they love it sweating. They love it kneeling or prone, grinning or weeping, preferably all at the same time and with feeling. Independence from treaties. Now that treaties are being read, not eaten breakfast of champions. Now that we are seeing beyond the worth of words on paper, a signature and an X, details of value, ownership, belonging. Now independence is declared from treaties. Now tragedy recorded on paper with pixels. After this tragedy, eat your treaties. See what champions are bound by. Breathe, as in, what if the shadow is bold in? Breathe as inhale, assuming, exhale. Imagine that, as in first person singular, homonym I, as in subject, as in center of the world, as in mundane. The opposite of spectacle, spectacular. This is just us breathing. Imagine normalized respite, gold in shadows. You have the right to breathe and remain. Imagine that. What in danger meant when her door was broken down by intruders with guns. What in danger meant. The system is not broken. The system is not malfunctioning. The system does not have a glitch. The system is working as intended. The system is working exactly as intended. Do not complete with colored pen. Do not fold or tear. Do not write below the line. Have your traditions ready for inspection. Lack of may lead to expulsion. We will protect you by turning the army into the border patrol. We will protect you by turning the National Guard into the police. We will protect you by turning the police into the paramilitary. We will protect you by attacking you in your homes. We will give you a receipt for your children. I can't breathe. Now a double valence. Now everyone in the abattoir is Tyra Hunter, except the paramedics are not laughing, except standing by and watching the rest of us die is official policy. Official or implied, the line's the same, not worth the energy for resuscitation, the cost of ventilator or dialysis, the same message. Our lifestyle and choices render us disposable as declared by systems whose choices and lifestyle restrict our own, whose 400-year lifestyle rests comfortably on our backs, sipping sugar-laced cocktails from our skulls. Know that we will and choose to spend our time before death living, not passing our time until death, dying. I want to thank the entire Nightboat team, many of whom you'll see this evening, Stephen and Kaylin and Gia and Lindsay, for all of your hard work to birth our book babies. And I hope that this summer you enjoy some stoop sun gazing. Bottom on one step, hot stone pricking elbows, body leaning on body, a dark, quiet, luminescent joy, the absence of attention, the sunshine sigh of being left alone. lovely lackadaisiality on the stoop, reflecting, caressing heat, still body, warm, pulsating, radiating. And the last poem that I'm going to read tonight is actually the kind of pre-poem of the book, the very first poem in the book. This book is for you, whether or not you survived. This book is for you, sleeping with the light on, so your eyes will open to brightness, no matter the weather. This book is for you, whether you quarantine stuffing your face and reorganizing drawers, streaming, staring. This book is for you and the woman who told me the world does not need these poems. Thank you so much.
That was so stunning. Thank you so much, Rosamond. Next up, it is my pleasure to introduce Muriel Leung. Muriel Leung is an Andrew W. Mellon Humanities in a Digital World Fellow at the University of Southern California, where she is completing her PhD in creative writing and literature. Her poetry collections include Bone Confetti, the winner of the 2015 Noemi Press Book Award, and most recently, Imagine Us the Swarm, the winner of the Nightboat Books Poetry Prize. Imagine Us the Swarm is a stunning, intimate, and innovative collection that blends poetry, essay, autobiography, and critical theory to examine the effects of gendered and racialized trauma across generations and identities. Please join me in welcoming Muriel Leung.
Thank you so much, Keelan. Thank you so much to everyone at Nightboat for putting this together and for, I don't know, everything. It's been a kind of dream process, I think. Like the book Imagine Us the Swarm came out on May 25th, and I just think one of the things feel so lucky to be part of, as far as the Nightboat family goes, is just that every email newsletter, there's a new book coming out that I'm just as excited for. I love being part of a catalog that I just can stand firmly by, and that I think represents some of the voices that I think really need to be heard in this world and who are doing really innovative work. And I think there's a sort of like collective energy around just like, if someone's winning, then everyone's winning. And I think that that's something that's, I feel very strongly about Nightboat. So thank you for like allowing me to be part of it. I wrote a book, this one here. There's a final section I'll read from. I've never actually read it all the way through, but it's where the title of the book comes from, and this last section is called When I Imagine All the Possibilities of the Swarm. And all of these poems begin with the refrain, suppose. Suppose we try to make a house of snow and failure. In the light, the violence glows translucent as a cellophane bark. The generations staggered along a line. I tap along the window frame, the ice pricking me back. The pail of us collecting water and from above in its slow drip. It runs cold like this for years, neither one of us suspecting, and this is how it happens. Each day of his youth, my father checked the canister of rice, watching the levels dip. He labored. Hunger bore a hole through him. To each member in his family, he fed. He was so small when his unborn sister began, a fine grain in the womb that would not feed, would only take. He told my grandmother, remove her, for the sake of rice and the brittle rib. My grandfather made his fist sing into my father's face. But this is not the beginning. Before this, two cells collided in the early waters of a more humid time. And before this, the universe was the kernel of many vengeful gods. Before, if only to go back to place the blame there, the plankton's wrath, the roach in the sea. Through the layers of sky, a pinprick narrow of sun burns through the glacial walls. So much water, we cast ourselves out and out, the house to follow, a pooling brick. I take your hand, I plunge us into the snow. Whatever impressions we make will become true in its time. Suppose the sky is flushed with change and it is possible. The dead and the half alive clamoring over the stuttering movements of speech. The wheels of our perpetual organs keep on spinning in defiance of death's persistent volume. Supposing it is true that when my mouth presses against the light, there is a soft black bloom. God has no dominion over blackness. In nature, where every color spools, I have been kissing a velvet moon. The light bounces off the chrysalis of night morning, revealing an amorphous sheen. If my father is not a ghost and my mother is not a ghost, then I too, a maker, a shape shifter. Bless this underlayer of sky and its many faces. The rain is not a light poison. There is no recourse for the things we have done to one another when we were hurting. I suppose myself into a whirl. When she wakes up from the solemn years, she will turn to him and say, "Hello, the not me." He too will wake to declare, "Hello, my courage." Suppose my father awoke, and the corners of the blue room beamed forth with a new aliveness. In my hands, his legs were full and supple as an apple. He touched his toes to the ground, surprised by his sudden quickness, the cancerous wound, a patched up hole in the ground. Around his bed, he ran several laps, then leapt once towards the ceiling, the lightning coursing through him. Never mind the coldness of the floor's linoleum. He skidded down the hall in bare feet, buckling with laughter over the pancreatic humor of his life. Ha, 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 rattled the hospital metal, fleeting their tray. Through every corridor, doctors and nurses clapped their hands and touched the wing of his back. He pelted through each floor so fast he rose from the ground, suspended in midair. The fluorescent light glowed pink as the inside of a nail. As my father made the next furious turn, I thought, please don't pedal forward without me. The gap in his hospital gown exposed a tiny sliver of a star of which I held on. Every room in his body flooded with the aquatic luminance of night. When I was born, we spoke often of flight. He touched my mother's stomach, and within her, I felt my own cord. Thus, we began the circuitry of love and tumorous ache. He could hurt us there and there. I watched the angels of his violence rise from him like a tuft of yellow smoke, and there it went. And with apology, he would live for 40 more years. Suppose I got into a car with my mother and we just drove. The day that she left, the air filled with a prickling sound. In the car's silver interior, we were pulled by streetlights and the debris of night. It became possible to drink one another's pains. Then dawn arrived. We had crossed 2 state lines, waving to their soft tracks in the air. At a road stop diner, we ate little and talked about our disappointments. Had it not been for the kindness of apples, then what? My great-grandmother filling the hunger of my mother before me, my palm opening to receive. The family women, 3 generations deep, sat watchfully in the corner booth, their mouths a pile of salt. It was not that she regretted the quality of our births, my mother said, but what would it be like to be chosen first and only? I begged her to return. I begged. There are animals who study grief for years. Did you know that, Mom? I said. It was possible she heard me and chose instead to contemplate the sugar spilled across the counter, each granular speck a patterned loss. I wet it with my thumb. How could we not see it? our mouths brimming with action and consequence. My father's heart turned away from us, dreaming into another future of glass. I share my mother's face, after all. The music repeats. Just one more hour, she said. She took my hand. With the women, our pockets lined with sugar, we left. Suppose it is easy to believe. Every sparrow landing leaves a fossilized mark, the hard air pushing against its wings, having shape, texture, and fold. Easy to swallow what we cannot see, what the barriers of flesh cannot know. The coarseness of evidence, the fabric of my hide. There would be no question of feathers, their lightness accruing iron, no animal testifying to the grave. When I bleed, I bleed. The forest rushes to bind the body red to me. Easy to make amends out of water. The fish leap from the foam, and this can be a victory too. Though I once placed too much faith in brute and ardor, it is softness that touches me. Even in the absence of love, I kneel before the altar of its loss, my belief lit by candle alone. I have this belief in the afterlife of many tender objects, the persistence of their kin. Believe that though the truth pockets holes, I peer through blinds and the kite of it is waiting there with tricolored bells. There is proof enough for you and me. There would never be any need for proof again. When I say I believe you, I mean this, the kite, the colors, the clarity of bells. Suppose everybody I ever loved made up a tiny universe in which each one thrived in their own planetary hues. I mistook each one for the central star, common mistake. And still I draped each of them in the garment of changing seasons. How many moons, I asked. They answered, and I supplied. The universe moved in strident form, each planet missing the other in orbit. I did not intend to collapse the blue planets, still unfurling in its newness, but the layers of its life saw no future for water. I abandoned a dry well, I floundered. Years ago, the universe held a pale sun. It struck a match through every star-kissed body, and in its stillness was painful as glass. I thought falling in love meant white hot, but that was only a fraction of the universe, of time. I felt the shadow first when I pleaded, eclipse me. It was the chaos of spurs and it burned. It came and went and in returning begged the spun miracle of rings. There would be no end to this carrying. For them, I knew I would always wait. Turning my body over, I saw the universe was halved, its noisy assemblage sliding towards collision. I held the planets close. I pressed their gaseous swarms to ruckus mass. I did this so they would believe me. Having endured the labor of the current, the universe was fast expanding. It needed to fold. Even I could not bear it. I surrendered, and I loved them all. Suppose the impact was a bell, a warning instead, moving through a hollow factory. The violence of men and the colonial rituals of their past were a lesson. In the pedagogy of grief, the earth was good, and then history, the stalwart chemicals of its wake still seeps in the soil. Would we not reverse that too if we could? The atomic weight of him pressed so deep into my torso that generations after would feel the soreness of ribs. Suppose my grandfather never struck my aunt because her cheek was there, and my father, in his piety to the self-same heaving, did not instead tell her to move out of the way. Because I was born witnessing, and in my queerness still desired a love of these masculine injuries, I listened too closely and was lost. The pattern undulates and recedes. Suppose I became the sound of wind chimes crashing into the ground, startling the other body there that would not move. The ghost of my future visits my past and tells her, you have to be brave. I could fortify my life this way. My allegiance to the bone, its refusal as instruction will buoy me when memory is not enough. to feel even now the soft impressions of many thumbs. They are not the violence I remember. There is nothing left to forgive. Suppose there is an end to our suffering. Like a chariot, the absence of grief encircles us with the obstinate heat of the largest star. To believe in the radiant orbit of this fire, to face an empty cup and find the constellated mire of you and me in the toppling of a century, we rise from the painful corridors of a life. Rarely did we dream of planetary rings, and yet, tilting ourselves up, we see the heavenly bodies of all that has passed, each one bright with surrender. We can go on. We can dress ourselves in the celestial cloak of this wide expanse, every woman and femme, and a disorder of the peel. I will never write another elegy again. I am looking at you now in the acceleration of time. All the possibilities of the swarm ignite, the humming of many wings amassing into a greater noise. We can write our origins sacred here and renounce the country of our fear. There is only our singular pulse when we fill the sky. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Muriel. That was radiant and cosmic, literally and figuratively. It was really beautiful. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Rosie Stockton. Rosie Stockton is a poet based in Los Angeles, and they are currently a PhD student in gender studies at UCLA. Their debut collection, Permanent Volta, is the recipient of the 2019 Sawtooth Prize. Permanent Volta is a charged and scintillating book that mirrors the constraints of life and love under late capitalism by writing against and queering the constraints of sonnets and sestinas. It asks ultimately how to be together outside of representation in the political, in care and intimacy and love. Please join me in welcoming Rosie Stockton.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kaylin. And thank you all for being here. I see so many beloved people here without whom this book would definitely not be possible. And I wish we could all buy each other drinks after this, but so happy to see you here. And I'll just start by saying I'm zooming in from Los Angeles on unceded Tongva land, and want to say a huge thank you to everyone at Nightboat, to Stephen, Lindsay, Rissa, Kaylin, Lena, Gia, for all of your care and labor. Echoing what everyone has said so far, it's such an honor to be part of the Nightboat family. And I was thinking the other day when I was living in Detroit, my friend Maya ran a little store called Ditto Ditto. And if you were in Detroit, around that couple of years ago, you might have stopped by, but it was a really special store. And she basically only sold used books and then like the Nightboat catalog. So I was just buying the Nightboat catalog like every season, and I was surrounded by Nightboat books while I was writing this book. So I just feel so honored to be part of this press, and really excited to read with poets tonight that I admire so much. So let's see, I'm going to start sort of towards the end of the book here with a poem called Blur Me Out. I've been up all night trying to figure out how to want loud enough to tie myself up and out into the after all of this luxurious thraldom that keeps me in the way of myself and my poem's perennial body. Autonomous bottom seeking non-sovereign top. Spit up into me so my digestive tract can get a full night's sleep, while the stars' algorithm churn out millions, squeezing light years, inciting a humming that clocks my little shapes of pain. They look different erupting out of this sinkhole of massive unseeing, my right now controversy vivid and on lock. I am all submitted to you, like you submit to the blossoming that happens in the siloed collective gut and gray water, a bacchanal inside us. We found each other under here, so we return the symbols we bought. We concoct new drives and partial objects. We barricade the speed bumps, disentangle the mission of highways. There, where we are mother of each other, where we are brothers, baby birding disobedience to our sense of self, cashing in on the real's residue. But here, call it stardust, call it umami, call me nobody, blur me out. Proem. Unmused ethnography of suns and smashed windows, oh dead, decorous and phenomenological our wages. Error cum laude, through fogs and fences, riotous our flood. Sing with me. How to say yes. Overhearing another's photograph, dragging public proof. It can't claim any of us decided the shade of red desk or the radio delivers narrative, baby. My broken Volta aches out a turn, but I'm late and dusty where I live. My boss dissolves panoptic, and the doctor's note is an obsolete genre like the hospital's parking fees, where requisite lines take longer than death takes, and the buildings blend and block the amount of sun in the asphalt space that slows the flow of traffic. When I was born, they dimmed my mother's pain too far, and there I was, claustrophobic birth canal, wet tissue on soft skull. And my mother said, never mind this certification, never mind this oceanic break, like trying to unknow the Big Dipper, an impacted decision, leaving me a common procedure with twisted chronology, coerced consent, a sludgy aporia, as if it wasn't too late when anyone said yes or never. This one's called More Money. Deadlines crush slowly like an architect's model. The beams don't come that long here, he said, forgetting unbuilt lightning, how it shakes my desk, failing my poem as it tries to pass as plot and city sounds. Where I break asleep knowing when he is not watching, he is listening to me and my exhaustion dreams. I've ad blocked them, a costly service, and my time will pay for it. The joke of clocking in leaves this vestibule poem broke in the VIP room, asking the boss of myself for more hours when I meant to say more money. Now all I've got are more hours when I meant more money. And just like the live record skips, my velvet genre breaks, plot and poem. Clocks in for the envoy that hasn't a thing to deliver, but more time to mean money. And I'll read one more. This one is called Serenity Post. Day, body, breathing. If I follow this seeing, what city summits can I conceive of? And how deep in the dirt can I rest my question, unwind my tide, break the law till it's broken, and together fossilize the known measures, hushed like nostalgic traces of rope marks imprinted around your wrists. Machine song, my forensic shame. This unconditional love in escrow, where a partial third party mediates my view of glistening dirt and faded starlight. I'm scared of the overexposed times when I disappear you behind yourself. And with sun-spotted vision, I'm left with only myself to love. Adoration, reinvented time. Some days I whisper my name quietly to myself, a rotund hypochorism, blossomed and swooping to usher in a new day and age where the horizon's my trade, and I turn back toward earth, tilting forward my graced pelvis, my arched foot bent around a lucite sun. Ecstatic form, risk, surge. Some days I cross-titrate myself with clouds and tidal chores. The earwigs scatter in dismay. The dust relocates, displacing the invasive bougainvillea. Little reminders like thunder cake the oat-encrusted pan, and I intertwine my aloneness with your piles of clothy barricade. Kill, fuck, marry. The screen, the window, the sky. Discarding all threshold, possessed out of possession, I adjust my sense of what is coming to what is already here. Together, the beach crowd calculates distant showers. A superstitious couple blames the traffic. Mattresses pile up on curbs, creaking. A detoxed pomegranate branch bends under its blossoms. Spectacular and paranoid, the perennial flowers mask up, multiplying like plastic, floating on camouflaged fences. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Rosie. That was really wonderful. I love that line about the boss of myself. It is my pleasure now to introduce Cole Swenson, who will be our next reader. Cole Swenson is a poet and translator and the author of 17 volumes of poetry, as well as a collection of critical essays. A former Guggenheim Fellow and the winner of the 2004 PEN USA Award in Literary Translation, she divides her time between Paris and Providence, Rhode Island, where she teaches at Brown University. Her most recent book, Art in Time, out now from Nightboat, blends art criticism and poetry to respond to the work of artists whose work moves away from patriarchal and dominating relationships to nature in their art and towards an intimate, symbiotic, and participatory approach. Please join me now in welcoming Cole Swenson.
Thank you very much, Brian. And thank you, Stephen and Kaylin and Lindsay and Rissa and everybody at Nightboat. Really, really appreciate all the work that you've done. I'm going to read two excerpts from essays in the book, and I'm going to share screen. So let's hope technology is working with us. Okay, so far so good. When I do this, I'm quoting, the essays all include quotations from the artists as well. So the first few minutes are going to be Renee, from an essay on Renee Gladman called Exemic Cities. A city in the distance is always something toward which a city in the distance is always rising up against, and rising within is always a city whose name is always on the tip, recalibrating the angle of the hand poised over the paper. The hand puts down the pen and goes off to make a cup of tea, while the distance of the city only increases, the distance between the hand and its own semantic possibilities. Renee Gladman's drawings could be anything, but they happen to be cities. They are vertical cities, built of sheer ascension, ascending across great expanses, and still expanding hand over hand, the intricate fingership, gestured an acrobat, embedded in the graphite, the finest scintillations of all the lighted windows receding across the plain. It was a city moving away, called by others to which it was linked through an intricate network of threaded silence emanating from late streetlights and the darkness honing in, getting closer and closer to the shadow of a walker who, beneath a wash of ink, occupied it all so that the shadow could think. Gladman refers to buildings as other kinds of beings. Thinking takes the shape of buildings, that only architecture creates the possibility of coming in. The entire west wall of Gladman's studio is a bank of greenhouse windows through which sunlight washes in and across the paper across which precise characters migrate themselves into habitable structures. As Gladman says, architecture again, it always comes back to that. Entire countries in which there is nothing not arcing or texturing in a crystalline accrual. We wait for the salts to bind and the tiniest bird, perfectly worded, breaks through the fine facade. All drawing and all writing are necessarily made by hand, and once inside, the hands multiply, splay, delta-like, feathering into living, gestures of ash within gestures of glass. And as if overhearing our very thoughts, a second city suddenly reigned above. We looked up into open, uncontrollable cathedrals, all sparkle and stark in their elemental assertion, infusing flint into the fevered greens that cleave and leave the leaves to dissipate into aerial meadows, intricate in their grasses, interwoven, which we too suddenly find we are reading. I like a pencil's relationship to the space behind it, which goes on back forever because a pencil is innately phantomatic, singing to itself through an inner phosphorescence. Interviewer, do notions of ephemerality, fragility, or spontaneity even come into it at all? Gladman, I wish I had more time. And the next, I'm going to read a section from a piece on Agnes Varda, the French filmmaker. Landscape of rain, raining down a street. People move more slowly in the rain because they're suddenly anonymous, which gives them more time. I'm in time, I'm old. I've been crossing time for years. Landscape of later, rain raining down the house, reappearing on the windows of a train. Umbrellas and small sails, the theater of the sea. Landscape of sand dunes, the sun cut into seagulls. Landscape in the shape of a breeze, breeze in the shape of its trees. Varda said that her favorite landscape is the sea, having grown up partly in Sète on the southern coast of France, where her first film, La Pointe Courte, considered by many to be the beginning of French New Wave cinema, takes place against a background salted, brittle, the splinter of air that crackles between them out there, the boats, just a liquid line of lighted windows, a candle lit upon a table. Or a landscape through which runs a river, both sides lined with trees, slightly therefore flowing green, the bells strung between, follow in slight distance, reflected on the panes of an orangerie. Or a landscape of evening, shadowing the park, landscape of ventriloquist in nearby pavilion, the land itself a voice coming through a white sheet thrown over a chair, landscape of a sheet of sun made of bees, landscape of openings resembling faces, flushing when addressed. And so maybe there really is a heart in each small box, also strikingly alike, the face fading back and the heart reduced to a sound, keeping time. If you give yourself time to sit here, time is part of the work. Varda often focused on people often unheard, vagabonds, gleaners, cleaners, shopkeepers, villagers, landscape embodying, even enabling character. Her penultimate film, Visage Village, with the face of all of France moving smoothly behind, the one thing that binds these otherwise disparate faces and places. That said, it's Les Glaneurs et la Glaneuse, the gleaners, that is for many particularly central to her work, which is fitting, as all film is a gleaning. Any film gets only leftover light, that which is not absorbed by things. And this makes us aware that the same principle determines all that we are and are not able to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cole, and thank you for preparing those pictures for us to take a look at alongside. That was really wonderful. Thank you again. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce our final reader of the night, Divya Victor. Divya Victor is the author of 5 books, most recently Curb, published this past April by Nightboat. A profoundly personal collection of poems, Curb maps sites of racial and religious conflict across cities and suburbs across the United States to investigate, through lyric and documentary approaches, the way in which immigrants are forced to navigate public space amidst the violence and xenophobia of American society. As Curb grieves Kith and reclaims Kith, it also staunchly imagines a life outside of fear for South Asian people. Divya Victor is a poet and editor who is currently Associate Professor of English at Michigan State University. Please join me in welcoming Divya Victor.
Thank you, Kia. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I often say to my students that, when they choose their publishers, they should start with a list of no's, things they will not do to serve the market. And then they should find a publisher who will consent to the no. And I feel that with Nightboat, they have consented to all my no's, and they have said yes to all my no's. And that has been really, really important for me. The things I will not do for a market, they have said, yes, I understand why you won't do it. And that's, I'm just so grateful to be part of a press that will listen, part of a catalog that will produce a weather that could include all of us today. Thank you, everybody, for reading. I'm very, very proud to be part of this season's catalog. I'm grateful also to be working and writing in land that belongs to the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi peoples. And I'm grateful to be a guest here today. I have an unrequited and complicated relationship with bureaucratic documents. Since I was 11 years old, the state has tried its best, many states have tried their best to reduce me to paper, to fit my existence into a form with which I could achieve citizenship. And as most immigrants and children of immigrants, I am practicing small acts of resistance in composing myself against these particular bureaucratic forms. And I've been trying for many years to use poetry to disobey those bureaucratic forms. Those forms that particularly function as what we call paperwork. And as a poet, I think of myself as a paper worker, but I imagine the life of paper differently. And I imagine that I'm more than my papers. So I'm going to read from a section from Curb that's called Petitions for an Alien Relative. And this poem is a rewriting of the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services form. It's a special form called the Form I-130. And Form I-130 is the first step in what they call helping an eligible relative immigrate to the United States. And you should imagine that there are wrought iron quotes around every one of those words. It has an epigraph from the form, which is an instruction. Please do not include graphic photos of childbirth or intimate relations as evidence for a relationship or marriage. Petitions for an alien relative. First petition. It is a Thursday, and no one out on this long street looks like your mother. So you go home, wrap yourself in form I-130, knit a nest with a ballpoint pen, limn your ken inside a placeholder, smooth your limbs into a square to beg a place for your first space, her. Write a name into the petition in thin, improbable syllables. No one calls her by this name in the elsewhere because they know her fish market haggle, purse tucked at the waist, sari pleats pulsing like flushed gills. No one except the men who will ask her, "Ma'am, can you name 2 national holidays?" And "Ma'am, who lived in America before the Europeans arrived?" So you plan it out, letter by letter in letters, your mouth cupped to her cataracts. Ma, just listen and answer. The men who ask how she came to know you, if she intends to remain here. And sir, for how long have you known that Ma was a bowl made for 2, brimming beyond any border, red as the arrival of her face 7 years later, a paper apparition drawn closer and closer to you by a queue unknotting at a frayed horizon, in an airport when it is a Thursday and suddenly she walks through the passport photograph you once stapled at the edge of a petition to anchor her womb to your migrating heart. Second petition, part A. Use this form if you are a citizen or lawful permanent resident of the United States who needs to establish your relationship to an eligible relative who wishes to immigrate to the United States. Right here, if you know this place as home, about a beloved whose skin you cannot live without, whose fingers know why the jasmine bushes will not flourish in your backyard in El Sobrante, why your batter sours too late, why no amount of sugar will make your tea sweet, why your front yard is scattered with pinions, why all mail arrives like a bird strike to the fuselage, the dotterels dawdling and then shredding the turbines, whose letters you fold and unfold and fold and unfold and fold and unfold and fold and unfold until the creases give way and you put the pieces back together on the dining table to make a map for a country made of vein and sinew, with hands pulled clean of wedding bands and raw rice, a map, a map, a map for a country of 2. Second petition, part B. If you need extra space to complete any section of this petition, use the space provided in part 9. Explain here again. Explain here again. Explain here again. Explain here again why they wish to leave behind the stone well where they first kissed you. Explain here again why they wish to leave behind the large terrapin, where the large terrapin laps the shadow and circles around the mossy rock overhanging the clutch of her eggs. Explain here again why they wish to leave behind where the large terrapin laps the shadow and circles around the mossy rock, overhanging the clutch of her eggs to circumnavigate a history of water trapped in land, where ankles graze against cotton skirts stamped again and again and again, with laughing doves carved into wooden blocks, where an open suitcase is an undug grave, where a field of sugarcane is a bruise spreading purple through land owned by the IMF, a land free of flags, yet flagging, 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 flagging. Third petition. I am filing this petition for my select only one box. Check spouse, check parent, check brother, check sister, check child. I'm filing this petition for my select only one box. Check other. I'm filing this petition during the third shift at the mobile. I'm filing a petition for her eyes. I'm filing her petition for her eyes and her tendency to leave jars open. That'll be 450. Have a good one. I am filing this petition for her eyes and her tendency to leave jars open and the way a nape turning away from me. That'll be 1780. Have a good one. I'm filing a petition for her eyes and her tendency to leave jars open and the way a nape turning away from me is a bride walking towards me, her hands veiled in a vermilion epic written with a crushed branch of henna. Yep, you'll find it right next to the coffee. Yep, have a good one. I'm filing a petition for her eyes and her tendency to leave jars open. And the way a nape turning away from me is a bride walking towards me, her hands veiled in a vermilion epic written with a crushed branch of henna, its flowers kept aside, each of the 4 sepals pointing in one cardinal direction, the lobes spread thin and patient, each red stamen paired and perched, the petals ovate and leaning across the cliff of the night into the gasp of the hungry hours. During the third shift, you do not see her as I do, between the Haribo gummies and the sour cream ruffles, fluorescent, arms akimbo, sweet burrow, sweetest sparrow. Last petition. Or UC or USCIS Form I-130, Spring Night Pastoral for my alien relatives. Ma, remember when we waded into the form field and pulled pussy willow with inky palms, flicked buckeyes into the checklist boxes, swung on drop-down menus like banyan branches, cut terraces into the small print marshes, dragged yoked highlighters through, roved the footnotes as you roamed unthreshed paddy, and we, yes, I remember. We parceled our family into the placeholders that September and huddled in the warmth of an archive set on fire. Thank you.
Wow, Divya, thank you so much. I am speechless, truly. And I just wanted to say thank you again to all of our readers and to all of you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Rosamond, Muriel, Rosie, Cole, and Divya. Please support Nightboat and tonight's poets by buying their books, which are linked in the chat. And as a reminder, you can also purchase a Nightboat subscription, which gives you all of our books published in the current publishing year. This includes everyone who has read tonight and many, many more authors. It's a great deal. You get a 25% off discount on the books. So please take a look at our site for more information on nightboat.org. And thank you again for your support and for joining us tonight.